Um, so if we could start with just the basics, your pronouns, where you're from, where you're living now, and like how quarantine is going.
Yeah. So my name is Jordan Plotner. My pronouns are he, him, his. Um, Quarantine's been great, honestly. It's been a great time. And that sounds completely not like the answer you'd expect to hear. Um, and yes, it's been tragic for all of the obvious reasons. And there've been heroic acts, none of which have been performed by me, just to preface, so just not to get any ideas. And there have been a lot of people doing a lot of incredible things and kind of reaching into the best of what the human being has to offer and doing good. I've personally, and there's also been a lot of unfortunate stuff which won't go into here, but personally, I've been very much socially isolated. This has kind of been my what I've always kind of wanted to do, of like going off the grid almost. I haven't gone fully off the grid, but this is the closest I've ever come to being off the grid. And I've had some little health uh, flare-ups, let's say, some emergency room visits and such. I'm okay, but it's all part of the excitement. And it's been a kind of a strange time to just go inward. Haven't had really much time before this in my life where there's really kind of everything is on pause almost, and give some time to give some good self-reflection. So I've called this my Coronaissance. Yeah.
I love that.
Not to be confused with my cone renaissance, which was last year post surgery. So I had to wear my like a cervical collar, one of those things, but I think of it like a dog with fleas as like its cone of shame. So
Yep.
I called it my cone. And so that was my and I had a great time going on my walks post-op, which was, again, we'll probably get there later, but these surprisingly magical times where you just not expect it. But that was my cone renaissance, this Coronaissance, and hopefully the renaissances keep coming. I'm down.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's obviously, all of the negative things which are important to consider, but focusing on the positive for a second, I think I've certainly also had a lot of opportunities to just kind of delve into stuff that I don't think I would have if I'm in graduate school. And so if I,
Oh, wow.
was still going to class every day and stuff, I like wouldn't be working on some stuff I'm working on, including this project. So
Yeah.
it's very
So what are you studying in grad school?
public policy.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And can you just remind me how, I guess, what exactly this project is, and I guess, yeah, just background.
Yeah, sure. So my good friend Mary Fashik is a disability rights activist who lives in Georgia, and we've been collaborating for the last couple of months on some other stuff. But she came up with this idea for a virtual celebration of the 30th anniversary of the ADA. And so she's calling it the True Project, and True stands for something that I forget right now, but there will be more to come on that. And so we're really trying to kind of focus a lot of the content that we're producing on disabled creatives, and like really in the arts and, all the things that kind of make life fun. And so that's why I had happened upon the Resonance Project a while ago, and I was like, oh, this guy would be so cool to interview. And then like this opportunity came up, and I was like, oh, I have to see if he'll let me interview him, because this is like
Yeah,
so
no,
cool.
I'm honored. I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool when it all comes together. So I'm curious, just a total music nerd question.
Yeah.
Have you had a favorite quarantine album thus far?
That is a tremendous question, because the answer is most likely yes. I say most likely because I try to, two steps back. When I first moved to LA, I soon learned, or I knew all along, but soon like fully realized that there are no different seasons here. Coming
Yeah.
from New Hampshire, that's a little different.
Yeah.
And I mean, I grew up on the East Coast and in London, and I'm very used to unfortunate weather, but also some great weather. Nothing beats New England fall, in my opinion.
Truth.
Um, However, for me, it got a little confusing with there's no winter, and winter. I mean, obviously there are parts of winter that are you want it to end, but I'm a winter fan, and it also helps kind of almost conceptualize the year, and the schedule and the calendar. And so I found that without that sort of marking or kind of way of breaking up the year, it was just confusing to remember things and like when things happened. So I started making, and I think a friend had been doing this, and I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Playlists, like songs for each month. And so I'll have each month, beginning of each month, I'll start a new playlist and I'll just keep adding things. And then I'll try to, with the exception of projects and other specific things, I'll try to focus my listening just on that playlist. So then in the future, I'll be able to look back, and just because it's music I want to listen to and enjoy, but it's also one day in the future, I'll be able to look back and say like, and listen to that and be like, oh, I remember what that was like then, because it's kind of, my emotional calendar is more precise in that sense than my chronological or temporal calendar, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's a good way to kind
Oh, so
of.
I I avoided the question entirely though. I almost dodged it. I'd say a few albums, and this is overwhelming. One, I had never listened to Kanye West before. I mean, like a tiny bit, and never really had any interest. Somehow, I was suddenly interested at one point over, I say this break, over this lockdown, and I did a deep dive, and so one album is actually probably My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and then there's this
Mm.
really great string quartet, the Emerson String Quartet, and they're playing Beethoven, or it's a combination of Beethoven's uh, last, I forget how many of them, but his last kind of few string quartets, and then Borodin as well. And it's Borodin's actually, I'm related to him. He's my like great uncle something something. I
Cool.
unclear, learned this recently, very exciting. But the string quartet in D is one of my favorite pieces ever. Um, and I feel like I had a really good recent discovery. I've just been trying to listen to new things. Nina Simone, Noah
Mm.
Cyrus. Those are what I've been listening to recently, I guess.
Good stuff. Fun mix.
And ABBA, and ABBA.
Oh, yes. You can like never be in a bad mood when you're listening to ABBA.
No,
Looking on your webpage there,
yeah,
looking
no,
at
bring it
your
on.
and okay, first of all, I noticed that you recently did music for Solar Opposites, which I just like binge watched, and I was like, that's so cool.
Just a little bit. I was not the main composer, but I helped out a little bit. So
That's very
yeah.
cool. So if this is, I know this is going to be a hard question. If you had to pick a favorite project or like maybe a few favorite projects that you've worked on, and I know this is going to be hard because you've done so many things, what would it be and why?
these are good questions.
I'm
And
glad.
and I should have answered. I'd say it's there are few favorites. Just to give you like a little bit of a idea, I think I'm working on like 12 at the moment projects right now.
Classic composer.
Not not ideal. I mean, better than zero. But I tend to get excited about things and then we'll just say yes and figure out a way to do it eventually. And so I end up kind of just cycling through projects, and over the course of the day, I don't I've stopped kind of keeping track of time, which almost sounds bizarre. But I just kind of I cycle through the projects. I eat when I'm hungry. Whenever I get bored with a project or I get an idea for another project, I'll jump there. And so I just kind of keep. It's just very much it's like very single person living where I'm not giving much consideration to there's I mean there are no other people in my midst, so that makes it easier. I've not even approached the question yet. Let's see. So in no particular order, um, there are some few that I should give mention to. One is my I guess the most what a good answer so far, right? Smooth,
You're crushing it.
articulate. Yeah, it's been good. So I'm writing a book right now, and it is kind of based on my experiences over the past 5 years or so. This uh, bizarre medical situations I've found myself in, and how they've helped me shed light on kind of childhood things that I never made sense of before, kind of the final puzzle pieces. And it's kind of a way of looking at all of this as not, like, I don't believe that everything happens for a reason, but I believe that um, in the predestined way, but I believe that um, they're kind of before me. There were my parents, grandparents, great grandparents, so on and so on. Lots of people had to exist for me to exist, for you to exist, for anyone to exist, and there's so many specific situations had to arise, um, and for any of these things to happen. And so thinking about um, the idea of how the role of an individual in this. I'm getting way off,
You're
but
getting real deep here.
yeah, no, it's kind of forced me into my deep philosophizing stage where like I don't interact with people, and so I can just kind of go all the way in. But basically, I'm writing about medical experiences, how and kind of little amusing anecdotes as well from them, like the people that I've met to and from doctor's appointments, some crazy characters. I sat next to Amtrak, or sat on Amtrak next to a professional James Madison impersonator, um, and which was absolutely brilliant. And he was fantastic. And he, in his former career, I kid you not, he was a computer science researcher at MIT sequencing the human genome.
Wow, what a
And,
jump.
and then he's a James Madison impersonator now. He spends his days cold calling historical societies. And there's an annual convention for impersonators where they come together. And he's always been very close with Harriet Tubman, which I love. And I don't know why I love that, but it just feels, something about it feels right. And there was another conversation I had with the chap at Starbucks near in like Northern Virginia when I was visiting. And we had seemed very friendly at first. And then we ended up in a conversation because he said that he was going to destroy the entire East Coast and then blow up all of California. And then so we got into kind of like a discussion about this. I asked him why and things like that, and if there was anything that could be done. And but it ended up being, and I kept notes on this because when I can, I take notes in conversations. And so I've got vivid notes from this conversation, and it's bonkers. And there's some things I can't make up. So that's a very long first part of the answer. Then the other thing would probably be, so that's what I'm working on now, along with Resonance Project, which I'll discuss at greater length soon, I guess. And then the other project that is most important to me, at least right now, is a musical that I wrote last year called The Jetty Chronicles. And it is about, or first off, I wrote it in a very strange period of my life. In fall of 2018, span of 2.5 months, get ready for it. My dog died, my brother got married, I found out my parents were getting divorced, was officially diagnosed with genetic condition, found out I needed surgery on my spine and skull, and I wrote this musical.
Oh my goodness.
And so it was a strange time, not gonna lie.
Tumultuous period, to be sure.
Yeah, it was, but it was also, I've never had a writing experience like that. Like some of the songs just they just came out. But anyway, it's about it's based on a series of stories written by my grandpa about his childhood growing up, learning to paint next to Coney Island, where he grew up, and he's a painter now. So it's kind of his coming of age leading up to his serving in World War II. And so it's there are all these crazy, it was a very strange place where he was growing up, and it's on this jetty that juts out into the ocean in like the lower New York Bay, this was a crazy time. Like now is a crazy time in the world. 1935, also a crazy time in the world.
Yes.
And I guess over like a 10-year period, lots of stuff happened. And so it's about kind of all the characters that come and go into his life in that kind of jetty area, and how they come into his mind and painting and life and family, that sort of stuff.
Wow.
What else? I'd say those are good. Oh, then the bonus answer is the Art for Ashley's campaign. It was an absolutely, there was no reason behind it. I decided to help in New Haven, an ice cream shop called Ashley's Ice Cream. I thought it would be fun to do some sort of kind of benefit to help them, because there was a new ice cream shop moving in that was giving them some competition, and all the students were like, "Oh, this new ice cream shop," and I was like, "But Ashley's," 'cause I'm a big ice cream fan. So I convinced a bunch of people to let me dump ice cream on their head, and my friend and I choreographed it, and he staged it, and he photographed, and that was all promo for the Art for Ashley's campaign, which is I got them to donate bunch of free ice cream, and I pitched up a table in the middle of campus, and I bought a lot of art supplies, and people get free ice cream if they painted something inspired or drew something inspired by ice cream. And then so we ended up with tons and tons of art inspired by ice cream that just went on the walls of the ice cream shop. And it's a great thing. So that's the other.
Idea.
It was a good time.
That's awesome. I love that. Oh no, my questions just disappeared. Well, that's fine. I know what the next one's gonna be anyway. So getting into the resonance project a little bit deep, what was kind of your initial inspiration for doing this, and doing it at this particular and strange time in life?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I had no pandemic was not even near my head, not even near. It hadn't happened yet. That's a better way to say it. And so I I had been thinking early on. When I say early on, I mean about a few months prior to surgery last year. I was thinking that I'd start eventually writing a book about this somehow. And then I was speaking with a friend recommended, like, oh, what about you ever thought about like making a short film? I was like, oh, not a bad idea. So I got and through her her nonprofit, I got a grant to make a short film, and so I got a little GoPro camera and just started filming everything, my daily life. This is starting for about a month prior to surgery, so that would have been, I guess, late late February. I started filming, and I've got a total of like 7 months of daily footage of me from before surgery, recovery, all that good stuff. And it's a lot. I mean, I think it's on like 45 hours of footage of me, just most of the time, as you could imagine, babbling in front of the camera. But again, most of the time I spent in recovery alone as well. And I mean, I was staying at with my family in Connecticut, but they were at work, and so most of the time I was kind of home. And there's a lot of time, as people have learned, I guess, during lockdown. There's a lot of time in the day when you're not moving very much, and so it was. I found that the filming of it and the documenting of this period of time provided some sort of it made everything better. That's again not a great way of saying it. It made everything easier, because, for example, like there were moments when, especially right after surgery, would have kind of bouts of depression and just kind of moods just going whoop up. I have no clue what's going to happen, because it's a combination of medication withdrawal and the chemical side of things, but then there's also the more existential, like, okay, I'm looking forward to being better, but I'm never actually going to be better. And what is recovery? Like, where does it lead to? It's not fixed. It's very abstract. And so that can get incredibly daunting. And so in moments where it's, I find myself kind of without a light, without seeing light at the end of the tunnel, I found that by starting to film myself, it was kind of like shining an artificial flashlight at the other end. So it like might not be like the legit light, but it's kind of endowing this whole thing with some sort of meaning beyond me, that made it all kind of that made it feel like it was worth something. And so it's an unnatural thing, because like if I'm lying on the couch in pain, like face red, just cried a whole box of tissues. They're just kind of laying on me. Just, it's not my best looking self. And so the inclination is not to start filming, especially when I can't like form coherent sentences and just like a blubbering idiot. But that's exactly what I did. And I would start filming, and I found that when I'd start filming, I would feel different immediately, because I knew that I was adding, that I was I was putting on the artist cap and taking it, and the patient cap, and kind of putting them, switching them off, doing a little juggling thing. And I knew that the patient part of me was, in the next 30 minutes, nothing much was changing. And so physically, any sort of improvement is going to be made kind of in short bursts as kind of psychological advances, and emotional advances. And those are often very difficult to make. And so I found that when I could capture those tougher moments, it would make the narrative intrigue a little more intense in the final project. Because like, no one watches a movie where bad shit doesn't happen. Like, you need some conflict. You need something to go wrong. I remember screenwriting instructors or teachers saying, like, the general premise is get someone stuck in a tree, throw rocks at them, let them down. It's like the story, it's like they got to be in the tree. But once they're in the tree, it's not enough. You got to throw the rocks at them. And then the them coming back to ground is only meaningful because they've been stuck in a tree being bombarded by rocks. So what was the initial question? Something probably
What gave you the idea for the resident project?
Yeah, so it was a combination of a friend asked about the short film, me starting to just film. And again, when I started filming everything, I had not a clue how it was all going to take film grant. I think it just kind of came to me. It was like, oh, that'd be fun. Like, because obviously I didn't need to, but I like adding music or somehow combining music or integrating music into it. And so I didn't know how I was going to do that. And then suddenly it popped in, like, okay, write some music and have a bunch of people perform it. I'm like, great. Who are these people going to be? People like me in some ways that kind of are stuck and that want to be part of some sort of musical community, part of an ensemble that might just not be able to, that might not be physically able to get up, or they may have once been an ensemble but wasn't able to make rehearsals because of any number of issues. And there's a real loneliness that comes from, or that can come from social isolation, obviously, and from a lack of access to communities like this. And there, I found that there's a distinction between kind of general support groups and online communities and blogs, which are incredible and been great sources of support in their own right. But there's something about music which is different and which is tough to really reduce into a like a non-musical Facebook group, for example.
Right.
And so I thought that it would be a cool way of showing this, and showing people coming together and being part of some sort of community that transcends their own physical limitations. And oftentimes, kind of one of the major, I don't want to say points of the project or revelations, but something that I was definitely thinking a lot more about towards the middle and as I got towards the end of the project is that I'm all of the pain and the issues and the genetic anomalies that exist within, speaking personally myself, those are also responsible for the parts of me that are maybe that I like a little more, or that are a little less, let's say a little less physically abusive.
Mm.
And so things like I only started getting into music because my sporting career, I mean, this was again high school, but my sporting career came to an end because my body was just like, nah, we're not doing this anymore. And so that's kind of when I shifted to music. And as I've, in the months leading up to recovery and after recovery and kind of now, I've realizing more and more little things that are kind of traits or quirks, things that I do or ways that I think, which I like, which I'm not able to separate from the EDS or any of the other kind of underlying related issues. And so it's like, okay, this is not, it's not an affliction. It's, I mean, if I had the choice, baby Jordan is like, okay, you're given a once in a lifetime choice. You can either have EDS or not have EDS. And I can't speak because I'm a baby at this time. So, but I would, in this hypothetical, I would answer the multiple choice with one of those like arcade buttons, like those big, like, and I would click the one that says, again, ignoring the fact that I don't know what EDS is at this point.
Sure.
I would click the one to have it. And again, there are better ways of describing that, but I got there somewhere in the end.
You did. Well, and I just have to say, so a little bit where I'm coming from. I've had kind of a similar experience in that I wasn't born deaf, but I've lost the majority of my hearing over the last couple of years. So
Wow.
Yay technology, because I can have my phone audio just like go right into my hearing aids. But yeah, like as a musician, I think that has made me realize kind of the inherent ableism in kind of the musical community. Like you were saying, this expectation to always be there and always be, at these long rehearsals and be practicing for all of these hours. And of course, those are like important things in music making, but doing something like the Resonance Project where you give people a little bit more flexibility and kind of meet them where they're at, you can still create something that's so beautiful, even without kind of the typical rehearsal and performance guidelines or aesthetics. And that's like, that's really cool.
But that's definitely the idea. And one thing I've been finding that's been, I guess it makes sense, is that I'm finding that people are expressing great excitement in the project, and then we'll start working on it, and then kind of health issues will arise, and then they'll be in touch with me and say like, something's come up, like, is it okay if I submit a few weeks late? I'm like, yeah, totally. Like, and I'm finding, I've gotten become friends with many people that I would have never been connected with before, and I've kind of heard their stories and shared my own, and I've tried to share little mutual or tidbits of wisdom that we might be able to offer the other. But in those moments, it's like, oh, so, because yeah, again, on one hand, I intellectually understand that other people go through similar things, but I'm not I'm only living one life that I
Okay.
know of at the moment. Um, not saying
Parallel
anything good.
universes aside.
Yeah, no, we'll see. But at the moment, and I know how I feel, and I know how I want to feel, and I know how I'm telling myself I feel in any given moment. But it's hard to even conceive of other people going through something similar, and seeing someone like just right now, seeing I uh, I have no idea what you've been going through on like a day to day this past week, this past year, um, and I'm not. I guess this project has kind of helped me and wanted to share the idea that I'm not. Yeah, I don't know what's happening with you, but given that you're a person, I imagine there's lots of stuff going on, and to kind of extend the almost extend the benefit of the doubt and just extra levels of compassion and empathy, to try and understand how people get to where they are, and kind of once someone is this is going to be good, once someone is somewhere, whatever thing they're thinking is, like, yep, that's, I said it. And I think one of the main kind of philosophical ideas behind the project is the idea of renaissance of I can't even say the project name, of resonance, um, and I use the idea of a violin string, for example. If you just have a single string, I'll say viola
Thank
string.
you.
Um, you got a single string vibrating. There's no body. There's no viola connected to it. Sure, it'll make a little sound, but it's just a vibrating string, so there's not going to be much there. But once you connect a viola to it, body and kind of the air within the cavity of the actual instrument, there's a lot more stuff to resonate. There's more mass, there's wood, there's air within, and so um, and so that's part A of the preface. Part B is that um, when any note is played, so say you play a C, it's not actually just a single. I'm sure you know this from as being a musician, but for people that aren't musicians, um, it's not just a single note that you're hearing. What you're actually hearing is a series of notes on top of it that go higher and higher and higher and higher and kind of stack up to infinity. Um, and it's called the Harmonics series. And so we call a note a C because that's it's called its fundamental frequency. And so basically the how much of the other notes you get, got a lot of this note, a lot of the octave up from that, or a fifth up from that, basically different weightings. It changes what the sound of the instrument is. So it changes how I'm able to tell a viola from a piano, from a parakeet. Parakeet, was it?
Cockatiel, but yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry, chompers. But and so the idea is that the fundamental frequency, the C, is all we're being told about. Like we're being drawn to the C. We don't hear all of the other things if we don't know to listen for them. But kind of once you know to listen to them, you can kind of unpack a single note, and it's this whole world of all other notes in there. And so the idea with that is kind of using that as a metaphor is the harmonics series of chronic illness or disability, in which there's the fundamental affliction, or there's the fundamental thing, let's say, but then there are all the other ways in which you adapt to that on a conscious and subconscious level, whether it's over the course of your day, things that I don't like. I haven't taken out the garbage this week. I should take out the garbage, but part of me is still scared of bending down and walking up and down stairs and anything which involves physical activity. So I'm procrastinating, but I'm doing it because, and I'm aware that I'm doing this, which makes it all the more fun. But like my body is like, no, 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 that's not us. Like we're not doing this anymore. I'm like, no, it's like taking out the garbage. Like it's something we got to do. And so the idea is that by myself sharing my own kind of very much in-depth daily life with EDS and with living with myself, what that looks like, and hopefully by sharing that, it will resonate with others, and kind of like the lonely viola string analogy, that will cause the others to kind of vibrate and resonate sympathetically, and in turn it will be a lot more open, honest kind of dialogue. And that's the idea. But there are some great musical kind of Curb Your Enthusiasm type, not full on situations that I found myself in, like where this was before surgery. There were a bunch of times when I had a bunch of projects that I was trying to line up, or that I was trying to finish before going into surgery. And so I ended up working until like the night before surgery on projects, just because also composer is not necessarily the most financially secure lifestyle, especially as a recent college grad. It's like I'm starting freelance. It's like not in hindsight the wisest financial decision, but you gotta, like, before surgery I knew I was going to be out of commission for a while. I wanted to make sure that I was somehow not just going more into debt while I was on the couch recovering. And so trying to kind of squeeze in as many jobs as possible before, and I found some points where I'd be sitting there recording, and then say my guitar is out of tune and my tuner was upstairs or something, and I knew that I could get my guitar tuned close enough, but it wouldn't be perfect. But I knew that also I couldn't, if I were to get up from my chair, likely I would not have the physical strength to get back there for the rest of the day. So it's like, do I sacrifice tuning, or do I sacrifice like not finishing?
Yeah.
And these like little musical decisions, it's like you hear like the wah wah wah, like kind of in the background of my own head when those things happen. It's like, okay, yeah, I don't know what to do. And yeah, there have been some really beautiful moments so far. There's an orchestra, a disability orchestra in Iran that has been rehearsing the piece, and they stopped for a period of rehearsals, obviously for when pandemic hit, and I think 2 members of the ensemble actually passed away from COVID. But they started rehearsals again by Skype or FaceTime, like as soon as they could, and they sent me a video of all the different members like rehearsing via FaceTime, and I was just like, oh my god, this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, just touching. And they're singing words that I wrote while lying in my cone in a fetal position on the couch in Connecticut in a great deal of pain. And they're now in Tehran singing. They probably have not a clue what the words even mean. And they're singing it and trying to work on their pronunciation of it. And it's just like, it gets to me. It's a beautiful thing.
That's so, oh, I love that. And I think that just speaks to something I've discovered from getting more involved in the disability community is people have just kind of an innate understanding, like you were saying earlier, like more of an inclination to extend empathy and give people the benefit of the doubt, than the majority of the population. And when you're able to communicate some of those ideas through music and through this like beautiful like international artistic experience, that's like that's really cool.
I appreciate it. Oh, it's the idea of trying to bring as many people into this as possible. But it's a yeah, definitely a challenge. But it's an ongoing process. And I realized that um, I was struggling with when I editing the documentary, because I've been editing kind of this whole time as well. It's like, what is the structure? Like how do I tell this story? What is the shape of the narrative? What am I trying to say? Like, yeah, I've got 7 months of myself. That's too much of myself. But what do I do with this? How do I make this into something? And so I was struggling for a bunch of months with this. And then it occurred to me a couple weeks ago, it just hit me. It was kind of like, oh, I'm not done filming yet. Like, I'm not done recovering. Like, the reason it's been, I've been trying to edit and kind of sculpt a narrative when I haven't finished living it. And so I'm part of me is also right now trying to take a step back and to keep recovering and living, and documenting that, as opposed to, and trying to step away for a little while of trying to, I guess, precisely sculpt the 7 months of last year, and more focus on how to make the next 7 months even better. I mean, that those 7 months set a pretty low bar in the scheme of things, so like it's not going to be too hard, I don't think. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, my last question for you, on the record at least, what how can people support the Resonance Project? Where can they learn more about it? How can they get involved?
Yep. So if you think, first off, if you think that you might be eligible, or that you think you might be interested, or that I might be interested in having you, I am interested in having you. And I've gotten a lot of emails like, oh, I don't know if I qualify for this. I'm like, you qualify. No auditions. If you think I'm talking to you, I'm talking to you. And you can find on my website. So it's jordanplotner.com/theresonance / I think. I should double check that, but I think it's /
I'll post a link with this
Okay.
as well.
And there's a link. There's a little trailer where you can watch kind of my hype video, trying to get people pumped up about the project. And then there's some background, and then kind of instructions on how to submit. And it's also the sort of thing where if a piece, or if a part is too hard, skip it. If you only have time to do a little bit of the piece, do whatever you can and send it in. And we're kind of going for to get as many people involved as possible. And so trying to make it as easy to get involved as. And also, if you play an instrument that is not written, there's not a written part for, let me know, and I'll write you a part for your instrument. We've had dulcimer, we've had all sorts of Iranian instruments. So we've got things I didn't necessarily anticipate in the beginning,
Cool.
but they're coming.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. This
Thank
has
you.
been awesome. And I know people are going to enjoy this. And yeah, I'm going to stop the recording now.
Amazing. Thank you.